Warning: viewer discretion is advised. The Holocaust. Over 6 million Jewish men, women, and children were systematically murdered by the Nazi regime during World War II. This genocide, fueled by a poisonous ideology of anti-Semitism, remains one of the most horrific events in human history. The Holocaust was not merely a tragedy for the Jewish people, it was a tragedy for all humankind. The Nazis' meticulously planned genocide targeted Jews, along with other groups deemed undesirable, including Roma, LGBTQ+ individuals, and people with disabilities. The victims were stripped of their humanity, reduced to numbers, and subjected to unimaginable suffering. It serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present threat of intolerance. Let us honor the memory of those who perished by educating ourselves and others. Visit your local Holocaust museum, participate in remembrance events, and stand against hatred in all its forms. The systematic extermination of millions of innocent people was not a random act of violence. It was the culmination of a carefully orchestrated campaign of hatred and dehumanization. The Nazi ideology, rooted in racism and anti-Semitism, portrayed Jews as a parasitic threat to German society. This insidious propaganda poisoned the minds of a nation, creating an environment where genocide could be conceived and executed. The Nazis' rise to power in Germany was facilitated by economic instability, political turmoil, and a deep-seated current of anti-Semitism that had plagued Europe for centuries. Hitler and his followers exploited these vulnerabilities, preying on fear and resentment to gain support for their twisted vision of a racially pure Germany. The Nazis' persecution of Jews began with discrimination and exclusion, culminating in the horrors of Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, in November 1938. The Holocaust was a turning point in human history, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred and the urgent need to confront intolerance in all its forms. The Holocaust left an indelible scar on the world, forever altering our understanding of human nature and the capacity for evil. The Nuremberg trials, held between 1945 and 1949, marked the first time that individuals were held accountable for crimes against humanity. The Holocaust also had a profound impact on the Jewish people, who emerged from the war decimated but determined to rebuild their lives and communities. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was in part a response to the Holocaust, providing a safe haven for Jews who had endured unimaginable suffering. Today, memorials and museums around the world stand as solemn reminders of the Holocaust, preserving the memory of the victims and educating future generations about the dangers of hatred and intolerance. By remembering the Holocaust and confronting the forces of hatred and intolerance that still exist in the world today, we honor the memory of those who perished. The Holocaust was a watershed moment in human history, a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization and the ever-present threat of barbarity. Before the dark cloud of Nazism engulfed Europe, Jewish communities were deeply woven into the continent's social, cultural, and economic fabric. For centuries, Jewish people had lived and thrived in Europe, contributing to its intellectual, artistic, and scientific advancements. In countries like Poland, Germany, and Hungary, Jewish communities flourished, maintaining their religious traditions, while also embracing the cultural and intellectual currents of the time. Jewish merchants, scholars, artists, and professionals made significant contributions to their respective fields, enriching the societies in which they lived. Synagogues, schools, and cultural institutions served as centers of Jewish life, fostering a strong sense of community and identity. Jewish families, like families everywhere, celebrated births, mourned losses, and marked the milestones of life with time-honored traditions. This rich tapestry of Jewish life, woven over centuries, would be brutally torn apart by the horrors of the Holocaust. While Jewish life flourished in many parts of Europe, the seeds of hatred and intolerance had long been sown. Anti-Semitism, a pernicious form of prejudice, discrimination, and violence directed at Jewish people, had plagued Europe for centuries. Rooted in religious bigotry, economic resentment, and social prejudice, anti-Semitism manifested in a variety of ways, from social exclusion and legal discrimination to outright violence and persecution. Throughout history, Jews had been scapegoated for a wide range of societal ills, from economic downturns and natural disasters to political unrest and social upheaval. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, anti-Semitism took on new and dangerous forms. The rise of nationalism and the growth of pseudoscientific theories about race and ethnicity provided fertile ground for the spread of anti-Jewish hatred. The Holocaust, the ultimate expression of anti-Semitism, was not a sudden eruption of hatred, but rather the culmination of centuries of intolerance, discrimination, and violence. The First World War, a cataclysmic conflict that shattered the old order in Europe, had a profound impact on the continent's political, social, and economic landscape. The war's devastation, coupled with the subsequent economic depression, created a climate of instability and uncertainty, leaving nations reeling from the loss of life, the destruction of infrastructure, and the collapse of economies. Germany, once a major European power, emerged from the war defeated and humiliated. The Treaty of Versailles, which formally ended the war, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, disarmament, and crippling reparations payments. These punitive measures, intended to weaken Germany and prevent future aggression, had the unintended consequence of fueling resentment and instability within German society. Hyperinflation crippled the German economy, wiping out savings, eroding purchasing power, and creating widespread unemployment. In this climate of despair and disillusionment, extremist ideologies, fueled by nationalism, resentment, and a yearning for a return to greatness, found fertile ground. In the tumultuous years following World War I, Germany found itself grappling with the humiliation of defeat, the crippling weight of economic depression, and a profound sense of national disorientation. It was during this era of uncertainty and disillusionment that a charismatic demagogue named Adolf Hitler emerged from the fringes of society, promising to restore Germany to its former glory and to cleanse it of the elements he deemed responsible for its decline. Hitler, a gifted orator with a talent for exploiting the fears and resentments of the masses, found a receptive audience in a nation desperate for a savior. His fiery speeches, laced with nationalist rhetoric, anti-Semitic diatribes and promises of a brighter future, resonated with those who had lost faith in traditional political parties and who yearned for a strong leader to guide them out of the darkness. The Nazi Party, initially a fringe group with a penchant for violence and intimidation, steadily gained popularity under Hitler's leadership. Through a combination of propaganda, intimidation, and political maneuvering, the Nazis gradually consolidated their power. By 1933, the Nazi Party had become the largest political force in Germany, and Hitler was appointed Chancellor, marking a turning point in German history and setting the stage for the horrors that would follow. At the heart of the Nazi ideology lay a toxic brew of nationalism, racial hatred, and anti-Semitism. The Nazis believed in the superiority of the Aryan race, a mythical master race that they envisioned as the rightful rulers of Europe. Jews, along with other groups deemed racially inferior or politically undesirable, were cast as enemies of the state, parasites who threatened the purity and strength of the German nation. Anti-Semitism, a deep-seated prejudice with a long and tragic history in Europe, was central to the Nazi worldview. The Nazis drew upon centuries of anti-Jewish stereotypes and conspiracy theories, portraying Jews as a malevolent force responsible for Germany's economic woes, its defeat in World War I, and the spread of communism. This poisonous ideology, disseminated through relentless propaganda, permeated German society, poisoning the minds of millions and creating a climate of fear, suspicion, and hatred. The Nazis' goal was not merely to discriminate against Jews, but to eliminate them entirely. In 1935, the Nazi regime took a decisive step towards the implementation of its racist ideology with the passage of the Nuremberg Laws. These laws, enacted at a Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg, stripped Jews of their German citizenship, reduced them to second-class status, and laid the legal groundwork for their systematic persecution. The first of these laws, the Reich Citizenship Law, defined German citizenship based on German or kindred blood, effectively excluding Jews from the German nation. Jews were no longer considered citizens with equal rights, but were instead relegated to the status of subjects of the state, stripped of their political rights and their protection under the law. The second law, the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor, prohibited marriage and sexual relations between Jews and Germans, aiming to prevent the racial defilement of the Aryan race. The Nuremberg Laws had a devastating impact on the lives of German Jews. The Nazis' aim was clear: to isolate Jews from German society, to humiliate them, to make their lives unbearable, and to ultimately drive them out of Germany altogether. The Nuremberg Laws marked a significant escalation in the Nazi persecution of Jews, creating a climate of hostility and suspicion. The Nazi regime unleashed its propaganda machine with relentless fury, bombarding the German people with anti-Semitic messages. Jews were demonized as enemies of the state and subjected to arbitrary arrests, beatings, and humiliations. The fragile facade of normalcy shattered on the night of November 9, 1938. Kristallnacht marked a terrifying escalation in the Nazi persecution of Jews, foreshadowing the horrors to come. Nazi mobs unleashed a wave of terror against Jewish communities, leaving shattered glass and smoldering ruins, triggered by the assassination of Ernst vom Rath by Herschel Grynszpan, a 17-year-old Polish Jew. The Nazis seized upon this act as a pretext for a nationwide pogrom against Jews. Nazi mobs targeted Jewish businesses, homes, and synagogues with brutal efficiency. Windows were smashed, stores looted and burned, homes ransacked. The streets were littered with broken glass, giving the night its chilling name. Synagogues, the spiritual centers of Jewish communities, were particular targets. Hundreds of synagogues were set ablaze, their sacred spaces transformed into infernos. The flames symbolized the Nazis' intent to eradicate Jewish life from Germany. As the Nazi regime tightened its grip on Europe, the persecution of Jews intensified, evolving into a systematic campaign of isolation and annihilation. Ghettos were walled-off districts where Jews lived in overcrowded, inhumane conditions, cut off from the outside world. The creation of ghettos was a key element of the Nazis' plan to dehumanize and eliminate the Jews. By confining Jews to these unsanitary enclaves, the Nazis isolated them, severing social and economic ties. Ghettos were in the poorest areas, with multiple families sharing single rooms. Food was scarce, sanitation abysmal, and disease rampant, decimating the population. Jews worked in factories for meager rations, struggling daily for survival. Children, deprived of nutrition and care, succumbed to disease or starvation. The elderly, weakened by hunger and illness, often died in the streets uncollected. On January 20th, 1942, high-ranking Nazi officials gathered at a villa in Wannsee to finalize the systematic extermination of the Jews. Presiding was Reinhard Heydrich, tasked by Hitler with finding a final solution to the so-called Jewish question. The minutes of the Wannsee Conference reveal a chilling indifference to human suffering. With the Wannsee Conference, the Nazi regime set in motion the final and most horrific phase of the Holocaust, the systematic deportation of Jews from across Nazi-occupied Europe to extermination camps, where they would be murdered in gas chambers. The Nazis, masters of logistics and masters of deception, created a vast and efficient machinery of death, transforming trains, camps, and even entire landscapes into instruments of genocide. The deportations began slowly, often under the guise of resettlement or labor conscription. Jews were rounded up in their communities, often with the help of local collaborators, and herded onto trains, their belongings confiscated, their fates unknown. Families were torn apart, children were separated from their parents, and the elderly and infirm were left to fend for themselves. The trains, often cattle cars designed for livestock, were crammed full of people, with little or no food, water, or sanitation. The journeys, which could last for days or even weeks, were nightmares of hunger, thirst, disease, and despair. Many died en route, their bodies thrown from the trains like so much refuse. Those who survived the journey arrived at their destinations, extermination camps such as Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, and Sobibor, where the Nazis had perfected the art of mass murder. The Nazi camp system. Central to the Nazis' final solution was a vast network of concentration and extermination camps. These camps served as factories of death, designed to eliminate those deemed undesirable by the regime. From Auschwitz-Birkenau to Belzec and Sobibor, these camps became synonymous with unimaginable suffering. Their names are forever etched in history as symbols of the Holocaust's horrors. For many Jews, the journey to Auschwitz marked the beginning of a terrifying descent into hell. Upon arrival, prisoners were met with the cold, calculating gaze of the SS guards. The selection process separated those fit for labor from those destined for immediate extermination. Families were torn apart, their pleas for mercy ignored. Those fit for labor were shaved, tattooed, and sent to work. The elderly, infirm, and children were directed to the gas chambers. Their journey to the gas chambers was short and terrifying. Herded naked into gas chambers, they were murdered with Zyklon B, their bodies disposed of in the crematoria. To enter a Nazi camp was to enter a realm stripped of hope, where humanity was systematically extinguished. Within the barbed wire fences, a brutal hierarchy prevailed, with the SS at the apex. Daily life was a waking nightmare of hunger, thirst, disease, and unimaginable cruelty. Prisoners, stripped of their names and dignity, were reduced to numbers. The days were marked by backbreaking labor and meager rations. The stench of death permeated the air. The sick and weak were often left to die slow, agonizing deaths. Medical experiments added another layer of horror. Yet, even in the darkest depths, the human spirit flickered. Acts of kindness offered glimmers of hope. Prisoners shared rations, whispered comfort, and clung to hope for liberation. Despite the horrors, prisoners found ways to resist and maintain hope. Acts of resistance included holding on to faith, sharing stories, sabotage, and escape attempts. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising symbolized Jewish resistance. Though crushed, it showed indomitable spirit. Even in darkness, hope and courage endured. As the Allied forces advanced, they encountered a reality so horrific, it defied words. The camps revealed the full scale of Nazi atrocities. Liberation brought immense relief and the task of bearing witness. Soldiers confronted unimaginable horror, mass graves, emaciated survivors. The world struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the Holocaust. 6 million Jews and millions of others were systematically murdered. Liberation marked the end, but the pain and scars remained. The world vowed such atrocities would never happen again. The Holocaust stands as a chilling testament to human depravity. Yet, amidst the horrors, the human spirit refused to be extinguished. Acts of resistance emerged as beacons of hope, testaments to courage and resilience. Resistance took many forms, often limited by brutal realities. For some it meant clinging to fragments of their faith. For others it meant preserving their cultural identity. More organized forms of resistance emerged, fueled by a desire for freedom. Underground networks risked their lives to smuggle food, medicine, and information. These networks also facilitated escape attempts. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising stands as a powerful symbol of Jewish resistance. In April 1943, Jewish fighters took to the streets, determined to die fighting rather than be sent to their deaths. In the face of unimaginable evil, extraordinary individuals risked their lives to save Jews from the Nazi regime. Known as the righteous among the nations, they stand as beacons of hope, their courage a testament to the human spirit. They came from all walks of life, representing various nationalities, religions, and backgrounds. Motivated by religious beliefs or a sense of humanity, they provided shelter and protection. Their acts of courage and compassion saved countless lives. The stories of resistance and resilience during the Holocaust are profound testaments to the enduring power of the human spirit. They inspire us to fight for justice and maintain hope. The legacy of those who resisted continues to inspire generations. Even in the darkest times, courage, compassion, and hope prevail. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising symbolizes the human spirit's refusal to be broken. The righteous among the nations remind us that individuals can make a difference. Their acts of courage and compassion serve as a powerful counterpoint to the darkness. The legacy of resistance and resilience is a call to action for all of us. We must confront hatred, bigotry, and intolerance, speak out against injustice, and work tirelessly to prevent future atrocities. The world that emerged from World War II was forever marked by the Holocaust. 6 million Jews and millions of others were systematically exterminated, leaving an indelible scar on humanity. Liberation revealed the full extent of Nazi atrocities, shocking the globe. The images defied comprehension, challenging human morality. The Holocaust shattered the illusion of a civilized world order. The international community faced the daunting task of rebuilding. Survivors felt relief, joy, grief, and the challenge of rebuilding their lives. Many faced displacement, poverty, and lingering trauma. In the aftermath of World War II, the Nuremberg trials held Nazi leaders accountable for crimes against humanity. These trials established that individuals could be held accountable for such crimes, regardless of rank or nationality. Prominent Nazi leaders like Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, and Joachim von Ribbentrop were prosecuted. Despite criticisms, the trials were a milestone in international law and human rights. In the decades since the Holocaust, the world has grappled with how to remember this horrific event and honor the memory of the victims. Memorials, museums, and educational institutions play a vital role in preserving the memory of the Holocaust, educating future generations about the dangers of hatred and intolerance, inspiring action to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry. The Holocaust, a chilling testament to unchecked hatred, exterminated 6 million Jews and millions of others. It reminds us of civilization's fragility and the need to safeguard human dignity and equality. As memory fades, we must keep the Holocaust alive as a warning for future generations. Never forget is a call to action, to combat hatred and discrimination. The Holocaust's lessons remain relevant today. Anti-Semitism, racism, and intolerance persist, reminding us that hate seeds still find fertile ground. The path to genocide begins with words and hateful ideologies, creating a climate of intolerance. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. The Holocaust teaches us the dangers of indifference. The Holocaust compels us to ask, what kind of world do we want to create? Do we repeat past mistakes or build a better future? Creating a world free from hatred is a shared responsibility. It requires collective effort to uphold human dignity, equality, and respect. Education is paramount in fighting hatred and intolerance. By teaching about the Holocaust, we equip future generations to challenge prejudice and injustice. We empower them to build a more just and compassionate world. The Holocaust also offers hope through stories of resilience and courage. These stories remind us to never give up hope and to fight for a better future. Join us in this mission. Stand against hatred, educate others, and promote unity. Together we can make a difference. Don't forget to share this video and subscribe for more educational content.